All right, let's revisit a story we covered yesterday. We'll discuss the impact of recent protests over undocumented foreign nationals and the response from government departments dealing with migration pressures. You'll remember yesterday, March and March and its leader, Jacinta Ngobese Zuma, addressing the media and outlining some of what they believe were the key achievements from the marches, especially that took place around on the 30th of June. And we said to you that was one perspective, and we will bring you other perspectives. The claims included claims about crime having gone down by about 28%, especially in the area around Durban. And they also spoke about pressures on social services being eased. So let's get a perspective then. Professor Busani Ngcaweni, Director of the Center for Public Policy and African Studies at the University of Johannesburg, joins us now to unpack the broader policy implications and the challenges facing the country. Good evening to you, Prof. It's good to see you after a while. Let's start with your overall reflections of some of what you heard yesterday when the leaders of March and March were addressing media, especially around the issues of the impact of the marches that have been taking place.
Thanks. Good evening to you, Tula Sizwe, and the viewers of this great channel. Well, there's several statistics that have been making rounds. Some official statistics, which is from government, where Minister Mamoloke Kubai, who is a co-chair of the JCPS, who's been providing leadership on this matter, has mentioned statistics of people who have moved, who have left the country, who've been repatriated. Of course, those are people who went through formal channels of being supported to leave, not those who will have left through informal channels. She has also mentioned the numbers of people who have come through. In fact, statistics are saying officially that there might have been more people who've come through the country officially through all our air and as well as land borders coming to this country as compared to those who have left. So that's one set of statistics. And then there's anecdotes that are emerging from practitioners, from social media, where people are saying that, clinics are half empty, that nurses have got more spaces and so on. And of course, there is the numbers that came from the March and March, people. Somewhere in between all of these numbers, there is a sort of truth that resides in those, which is what we need to interrogate. Because to the extent that Statistics South Africa will, in the coming months, give us statistics on employment and unemployment for the current quarter, to the extent that there will be several other numbers like from ESCOM and so that will be coming up, we will then have a true sense officially, that is, of whether or not it is true that there might be a number of people who may be, connected to the grid illegally, not paying, or that in fact there might be people who may, when the government do issue the statistics, who are no longer accounted for in the system because they have left the country. So there is a truth somewhere in between all of these numbers, sometimes which are conflicting and contrasting. But there is something that needs to be stated, Tulasis, which is that in as far as crime is concerned, usually in the country, when there is like kind of protest or heightened awareness, there is a tendency for crime numbers to come down a little bit because everybody is aware that everybody is watching, and therefore they restrain themselves from doing crime and things like those.
Is it possible to have this conversation, Prof, about fidelity to actual statistics while at the same time not undercutting the campaigns of a movement like March and March, but, holding them accountable to statistics that are official, provable issues and facts and figures? Or does it matter more, the anecdotes? Do the anecdotes matter more? Because part of the message of March and March has been to say that, of course you're going to dismiss what people are saying, but the anecdotes of the people who live with these social services that are under pressure, with these issues of illegal connections to the grid and other matters to do with crime, etc., those anecdotes actually matter more than anything anyone else can say. So I'm asking, in fidelity to this conversation, can we test and interrogate the statistics as thrown out by March and March without seeming to undercut their message overall?
Look, there's a great possibility, and we have to be honest here, to the extent that there will have been a number of people who have left the country. There could be 50,000, there could be 100,000, there could be more. Whilst they were in the borders of South Africa, they were using water and electricity. And so, of course, then we will see the numbers because, I mean, drove past the consulate of Malawi, and I saw the desperation of the citizens of Malawi who are trying to make a way back home for safety and so on. I suppose when they were here, they were having certain access to services like water and electricity. And so to the extent that that may be the case, it means they may not be reporting for medical healthcare, they may not be reporting for any other form of a service. It may then be true that in instances in the pockets of communities where they were concentrated, because they're no longer reporting there, which means that you might have fewer people who may be reporting there. And of course, the numbers eventually will come out from the use of electricity. As the researchers, we need to zoom in into those pockets of communities, the use of medical healthcare and other social services to look at what is now happening because some people have left, but also most importantly, on the employment numbers. And there, which is why I say that there's a truth somewhere in between all of the extremes on the employment front is, if we assume that most were regular and they were the papers and they were not being exploited, then it means the numbers will then suddenly show that there's great numbers of jobs that are suddenly vacant. If they were unemployed, if they were undocumented, being abused in those workplaces where they were, the numbers in the employment front would not change because they were unaccounted for. So somewhere in between there is the truth, which is why it is important, therefore, to let's do that. What you are doing, for example, as SABC, to do these follow-ups, to visit communities, to engage on the matter sustainably, will help then peel this onion so that we get into the bottom of what is actually happening. Because the two extremes of Abahambe and the extreme of Abahlale, both of these extremes don't deal with some of the core policy pressures that the issues of migration might be causing in this country, as might be the case in any other country, including the fact that from a policy point of view, we've got to be responsive to some of the dire conditions of people who may work in a construction site where the building collapses, we saw in George, and those people are unaccounted for because they're undocumented, and there's a desperation now of how you even repatriate them because they were working in an environment where they were being exploited and they were undocumented.
All right, Prof, let's leave it there for this evening. I've got to thank you for your time and sharing of your insights. That is Professor Busani Ngcaweni, the Director of the Center for Public Policy and African Studies at the University of Johannesburg.